Yeah, it sounds like it. What's your experience in terms of user groups?
Well,
What subject matters?
lots of user groups. I had been a member of user groups, through my work when I was working in IT. So it was essentially in the 1980s, early 1990s. There was a Stratus computer user group, and that was very, very specialised. Like it was so specialised that it was actually cheaper to fly me to the US or to the UK for user group meetings or for training than it was to get the trainers to come out to Australia to train us.
Yeah.
Then when Linux came out, well, quite a bit after Linux came out, actually, in about 2000, I started joining the Sydney Linux Users Group, which is where I met Peter. So then I've been members of other users groups. I mean, obviously Canberra Linux Users Group. Last year, it was the Canberra so I should have let people that just went up. The Canberra Python Users Group. So I'll put that up. Canberra Python Users Group was essentially started last year by Elaine Williams, and she was a master's student at ANU. Now the interesting thing about the Python users groups is they have this thing called, globally they have these things called PyCons, Python conferences, and in Australia they have an annual PyCon AU. And PyCon AU, the next one, as far as I know, is in Tasmania, and I think it's next month, or very soon anyway. I don't know what the dates are, I should check. So, I attended the PyCon AU meeting in Sydney, which was, I think, the year before last. Because I was interested in Python, I started using Python in about 2008 in the context of mathematics, because that's what I do, I'm a mathematician. As part of that, attended talks by Ed Schofield, and Ed is a trainer. He has basically an organisation called Python Charmers, when the Python user group was set up last year, Elena either went to Ed or Ed went to Elena, whichever. So Ed was associated with the Python users group and helped to set it up, helped to get it organised. The thing was, at the end of last year, Elena graduated, and when she graduated, in some sense, she took the group with her. So that's apparently a common problem, is that if you have an organisation where the leadership is sort of thin enough, if anything happens to the leader, then the organisation can actually fall over. And to a certain extent, that's what happened, because I was looking for signs of life in the Python user group since Elena graduated, and taking a look at all of the different electronic things, you can't see anything having happened in that user group since September last year. So what electronic things were they? They were things like, there was a wiki, there was a mailing list, and there was a meetup group. And there were regular monthly meetings. Well, more or less regular monthly meetings. the sorts of things that I want to find out about really are if I'm interested in taking a user group which did exist last year and restarting it, what are the sorts of things that I should be doing? And going back one step, what do you think a user group is, and what do you expect from a user group? Which is why I've got a whiteboard and markers, because I'm going to see if I can jot down any points. I mean, has anybody been in a user group before?
Oh, yeah.
What sort?
Several different sorts. I think, though, that you seem to at least have something already there.
Well,
yes. If you've at least got a wiki page, you've got a mailing list, you've got a meetup group, you've got somewhere to start with.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In fact, there's two issues there. One is expectation, because those things are there. But it's also control, because those things usually are, I don't know so much about the wiki, but certainly things like a mailing list and a meetup group, there's usually some structure there, so somebody owns it.
Well, somebody has to own it. In fact, that can be a problem. There was a takeover of the Sydney Atheists meetup group by somebody who simply went in and paid the fee and owned it. That was sorted out eventually. I think it was sorted out by flaming torches. But so that is a danger. But yes, meetup, obviously someone has to pay for it.
Yeah.
Make sure it keeps going. But if you've at least got that, that gives you a mailing list of sorts.
So this is actually paid for, is it?
Yeah, there's an annual fee for meetup. I don't know how much it is. It's not a lot.
Well, there's usually venue and there's potentially food or catering or whatever. There's certain fees that you might be getting at.
Yeah.
But would it be a user contribution sort of thing, like, hey, we're just meeting at this place, everyone paying $20 or something like that? Or?
Well, that's the type of option you need to look at, I think, in this situation.
Meetup is quite effective because it's more or less automated. That if you simply just put the details in there and everyone gets the message, they get told what it is, it automates the responses so you can count the number of people.
Yeah.
It gives you little reminders to come and later and say, did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So it's good, but there is a fee associated with it, but you need to find out who owns that and then take control of it.
Okay, well, as far as I know, with the meetup group, because it's paid for, I have a suspicion that it's actually at Schofield. Because it's called the Python Charmers meetup group as opposed to the Canberra Python User Group.
Right, yeah.
So I've been in contact with Ed, and so it certainly is, and he's already responded positively, so it's already the case. I think that hopefully should be taken care of. So I mean, to me anyway, I'll tell you what the user group means to me, and that is an opportunity for people to meet, to share ideas, to share experiences, to share problems, and possibly solutions. And the structure of the Python user group was interesting because Python is a programming language, so a user group for a programming language should be a group of programmers, I would think. And in fact, what that consisted of was some proportion of ANU students, some proportion of web developers, and some proportion of scientific Python users. And some people who are combinations of all three to various extents. So what that meant was that I went for some sorts of lively talks, and also quite often that conversation would be continued at dinner afterwards. So there was various sorts of things that could happen after the meeting. Either it could be catered, people could go to dinner afterwards, people could go to the pub afterwards, and various sorts of combinations of those. The wiki provided at least some way that people could start exchanging ideas, and the mailing list similarly. What I did notice from last year was the mailing list was nowhere near as well, as intensively used as the Canberra Linux users group mailing list. Has anybody been on that Canberra Linux user group mailing list? Yeah, it's quite intense. I mean, I subscribe to it, but I subscribe with a daily digest because it can have like a half a dozen emails a day on the mailing list, and I've actually subscribed to the Daily Digest, and with the address being my home internet address and my work one, because of the possibility of it flooding my work email. And that caused problems, in fact, because I was going to go to the meeting on last Thursday, which was the Canberra Linux User Group has a programming SIG. So Programmers SIG meeting last Thursday was cancelled, and a notification came by email about just before lunchtime on the same day that the meeting was supposed to be there, and I didn't get it until the next day, so I turned up anyway. So there's some difficulties with using the mailing list. I don't know, maybe Twitter could be useful instead, or as well.
What about things like forums? Bulletin board forums, which have things like wikis and calendaring systems with different.
And what would you use it for?
Talking about various discussion topics, talking about meetups. You can say this is cancelled and then automatically have it linked to a group shared calendar, which you can subscribe to. I'm not part of any user group, but I used to be part of some programming societies and stuff back
Such as what?
back in Sydney in UTS. We started the Computer Society's user group, and just groups essentially.
Yeah.
We weren't specific to any, like the Canberra Python user group or the Linux user group. We weren't specific to a language or some genre of IT. It was just a generic. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it.
Yeah, I think there's a play in it, whether it's a specific user group or whether it's any type of grouping at all.
Yeah.
One of the main things is, I think, if you're going to have monthly meetings, make sure that they're regular.
Yeah.
They have to be consistent. Yeah.
Consistency.
Yeah.
People will turn up without being notified, and I'd rather turn up for something and find it's not on than hear about the next day about the fabulous speaker and everything that happened last night.
Yeah.
So, if you have a regular meeting place, now the problem, obviously, before that, about moving to university, finding the place to meet can be a problem.
Yep.
Now, generally, if you're a university club or group, you can find a room at the university and give it to you for nothing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I thought we'd do is see if we can have the first meeting for this year in the same room as the last meeting for last year. So that at least it would provide some level of continuity.
But I'm quite happy involved with the Australian Computer Society over here in Canberra.
Yeah.
And they have events all the time, so they again have the same venue. It's roughly the same time every month.
Yeah.
Roughly the same, not just the same time as in say 5:30 to 7:30 kind of thing, but the first Tuesday of every month, for example. So even if you don't exactly remember the specific date or who's speaking, you just walk up and there's something going on.
Yeah, I used to run Western Sydney chapter for the ACS, and by making it, whatever the particular Wednesday was a month, even though we emailed everybody and let them all know, people would turn up without getting a notification because, hey, third Wednesday of the month, whatever it was, at that location, you'll be there.
At that time, and if there's a charge involved, so they know what the charges are front and it's consistent, it's regular. But it does sometimes take a lot of effort just to keep it going.
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing consistency is one of the main things that we should be going for. And so it does make it a bit of a pity that nothing's happened so far this year. So find a meeting place, preferably the place where we last met. I did go to at least one ACS talk this year. It was actually at CSIRO Discovery.
that's why they normally have.
That's regular places. Okay, yeah.
It can, if I recall correctly, I think they're not too expensive, but they can be.
Yeah.
They do it on a per head basis, so I think the venue is about $300 and the catering.
Oh, okay.
So for a user group, that might be over the budget.
Try to find a free place if you can.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm going to see if I can get the same room back at the university for that reason. The thing is that if I can get these these vehicles again, then I should at least be able to find out, for example, the mailing list should have some idea of who these people are
That's right, yeah.
and contact them. I do know that at least some of the attendees here at Barcamp are also Python programmers. So I don't know what I can do with that information, but at least I know. I know, for example, Amanda was just talking about Git is a contributor to an important Python-based project. So it does look like at least some of the ideas that I've got are more or less on the right track in order to at least get something started again. And it really is the case of at least initially taking some leadership in it. I'm not the only person who wants to get this started again. In fact,
That's important. If you can get a couple of people,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to do it by yourself, I think.
Yeah, I've got 2 other people in mathematics at ANU who are interested in getting it started again. And that's the thing, I did mention it to them a while ago, and then put in some effort to see if I could contact Elena and Ed. Elena hasn't responded yet, but Ed has. So it does mean that it should be something that we should be able to get going again, probably in April. Any other suggestions, really?
One of the difficulties I face is the engagement with your target audience. Because people want to get something out of it. They want to know sort of what the agenda is and how can it benefit them. So it's publicising that agenda or that discussion that's really important to drive up that interest and bring that audience in.
It's possibly
Maybe
easier.
to start out by setting the agenda, like what exactly do you want to, who are your target audience? Whether is it all programmers or is it that mix of people? So who you're trying to focus, who you're trying to get, what does everyone actually want out of the user group as well? It's a common mandate.
And Python's an interesting one because you mentioned that there are several different types of users.
Especially in Canberra.
Because
Canberra is an interesting place for Python users because you've got government Python users. A lot of that focus is web-based. You've got government instrumentalities where a lot of that focus is a combination of web-based, analytical, and maybe even scientific for specific reasons. You've got the universities and other sorts of scientific institutions, and of course if I'm doing something at the university I'm going to have students rocking up as well. So there's that mix which makes, I think, for an interesting discussion.
I currently work at Geoscience Australia, so I think we get all 3 of those types of groups out there.
That's actually encouraging because you've got really a broad audience, but also who the fact of saying it's a Python users group really defines what it is. Right? So you don't have to say an awful lot more about it. If you're a Python programmer, there's a Python user group, and you're serious about what you do for a living, you're going to say, well, gee, maybe I can go there and learn something from someone.
But then again, being devil's advocate, if I'm a Python programmer, why should I come up to a regular meeting where I can just surf online, talk to people online on the forums?
Oh yeah,
So there's the whole bring value to the whole meeting.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I would want to know what's in it for me.
Exactly.
Well, maybe the way to do that then is to look at these disparate groups around the place that use it and say, okay, we're going to have someone, geoscientists, come along and talk about how you use Python for a specific kind of application. And then the web people are going to come along and say, wow, can I do that sort of stuff with it?
Maybe crowdsource ideas during one of those meetings, say, geoscientists, let's pick up you. Hey, we've got a problem with something, we're trying to solve it, we've got some programs, we've got whatever, but let's get everyone in the next meeting to spitball ideas. Stuff that we can then research and do whatever.
I mean, I found with these, particularly with self-programming language type groups, I haven't been in one for years, because now I no longer do programming, or sorry, I do, but not for a living, I do it as something else. I would find something that's useful just because that's the best way to find out. Now, you can go and ask questions on the web, but to talk to people that do it is still the best way to find out how to do things. Because you'll find someone, you'll always find someone that's had the same problem. Now, they might have had it for a different reason. Someone might have had a problem accessing a database as a web back end, and they find, hang on, one of you guys have done it, because you had the same situation trying to process survey data.
Yeah, oh, the number of people who, for example, use statistics and analytics, it's actually common between the web-based people and the scientific people. The scientific people want to use it for scientific reasons. The web-based people want to use it because they've got a lot of people who are using their web stuff and they want to analyse what's going on with their web stuff. So, you know, for example, the talk on pandas is something that's actually common between the two. Anyway, thanks a lot. It sounds like we're now getting to our next stage, which is 10-minute crossover.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with your